Okay, let's get started, folks. So thank you to everybody who's with us this morning. Good morning to Redbourn, to Redbourners. My name is Ivan Hickmott, and my job this morning is to somehow stand in the shoes of our regular host, Simon Vegro, who's sunning himself on the wet beaches of Cornwall as we speak. This is a particularly special community news bite in that we are being part of the SustFest 2-week festival, the sustainability festival that's been run across St Albans and the surrounding towns and villages over the next 2 weeks. We're going out live, as we normally do, on Facebook, on the Active in Redbourn Facebook site, and within the hour of finishing, you'll be able to access a recording of this whole community news bite on the Redbourners Facebook page and on our Active in Redbourn YouTube site. Setting aside the hosts, all of our listeners will be on mute with their video off. But if anybody wants to increase their, no, I need to say this word, anonymity, to increase their anonymity by changing their name, you can do that through the Zoom facility. So, just before I get us started, with one exception, the focus of today is the topic of sustainability, which from a personal point of view, I've learned in recent days how little I know about the topic. So I'm hoping that, well, I know for sure that our guests are going to give us some food for thought over the next 45 minutes to an hour. They're going to be looking at the topic from different perspectives, of which more in a moment. We have guests from our own community in Redbourn, from the village, and we have some guests from, I'm going to say slightly outside the village, but still fairly local, who will give us another perspective. It's an opportunity to learn more about the topic. And a chance, I think, above all, for us to think about what practical actions we can take as fellow citizens of the planet who happen to be living here in Redbourn. It's a way of bringing, you know, we hear a lot of talk in the newspapers, on the TV about the global climate summit in Glasgow later in the year. It's a way of bringing all that down to earth in a way that's meaningful, I hope, for us as Redbourners. But before we get started on the topic of sustainability, it occurred to me that we can't do anything about sustainability and climate change if we ourselves are not healthy. So it seems a good place to start to have our weekly, you're smiling at me, Liz.
Very good link.
A weekly COVID update from Liz Richards. So Liz, over to you. Give us some news and update on the topic that's close to all of our hearts and our heads.
Thank you, Ivan. So morning, everybody. So I was on a meeting yesterday with the CCG, and we got a bit of an update, and I thought it might be interesting for you just to know a few statistics that are going around at the moment. So as of yesterday, there was one person in Watford General Hospital with COVID, so just one, and we've not had any deaths in Watford General Hospital for the last couple of weeks. So things are definitely looking a bit brighter, which is really, really good news. Yeah. The biggest rise in infection rates, which is still small in comparison to what it has been in previously, but the biggest rise in infection rates is in the 12 to 16-year-olds at the moment. Obviously, they're not poorly with it, and often they don't know they have it, and they're being picked up by the lateral flow tests that they're doing in school at the moment. They're all testing twice a week. So I suppose my message really is, if you've got grandchildren or children in that age group, to really encourage them to do these lateral flow tests, because they are picking up infections, and that's where the spread is at the moment. So do encourage them to do them. There are some hotspots in Bedford at the moment, which isn't too far away from us. So we still do need to take care, hands, face, space, fresh air, all of that, because I think it's very easy to get a bit complacent at the moment as things are opening up, but it is still out there, and we do still need to be careful. as things are opening up, we've opened the doors to the surgery now, so there's no more intercom, which I think will be good news for everybody. But again, we still do really need all our patients to join together to make it a safe environment. So we do need people to wear masks when they come into the surgery. Please still do come on your own unless you need somebody to help you. It's not a family outing, I'm afraid, at the moment. We can't have full waiting rooms. And if the queue or the waiting room is full, then you may be asked to wait outside. Rare to happen in Redbourn because it is quite a big waiting room, so we should be fine. But just so that patients are aware that if at any point it does become a bit too full, the reception team will ask you to wait outside until there's more space. We're still operating a telephone first system and will continue to do so, again, to keep the amount of people coming up to a minimum. Although the doctors and nurses have lowered their threshold of when they will bring people up for face-to-face appointments. So obviously at the peak of the pandemic, that threshold was quite high, but that will be a little bit lower now so that people can have face-to-face appointments if they wish to, but you will need to speak to a doctor first. Certain things like smear tests, diabetic appointments, wound dressings, and certain doctor's appointments, like if you've got breast lumps on the neck that obviously a doctor will need to see, they will be booked in face-to-face straight away. You don't need to have a phone call first. Because we've had lots of positive feedback about the convenience of telephone appointments for many of our patients. So we are going to keep that going. Vaccines wise, Bretherton is now age 32 and up. So they're slowly getting down all of the age groups, which is good. And second doses have been brought forward to 8 weeks rather than 12. And the reason for that is that is a bit of a race between getting people vaccinated and the Indian variant. We know the vaccines work against the Indian variant, so they really want to get that vaccine rollout done as quickly as possible so that doesn't put everything backwards. And just to pick, I didn't know you were having a sustainability session today, but just to pick up on that point, we are about to start, we've been given a toolkit actually to do an assessment at the surgery to see how green and sustainable we are. And so we've got an audit to do in the next few weeks, and there will be some things that we can do to make us more sustainable. I know there's things around inhaler choices and things like that, which could make a massive impact. I think somebody told me that if you have a Ventolin inhaler, it's the same as travelling, and you throw that away, it's the same as travelling something like 170 miles. Oh, wow. So the effect on the planet. So there's clearly a lot that we can do to improve the planet for everybody and be a bit more sustainable as well. So that's really interesting that you're spending that today on that topic, because it's something that we have recognised at the surgery we need to look into further. And that's really all I had.
Well, thank you for that wonderful segue into the rest of the show, Liz. You remind me that this topic is something that when you think about it, there's stuff every one of us can do. And yeah. It's the thinking about it. So I'm just hopeful, I'm pretty confident that this investment of time this morning will trigger some thoughts in all of us, like a call to action, if you will. Which applies whether you're, in a big company organisation, the biggest employer in the country, the NHS, or you're sitting in your living room thinking, what difference can I make? So
absolutely.
Thank you for that segue, much appreciated. And we'll talk to you next week or the week after.
Yeah, lovely. I will see you then. Thanks,
you. Liz. Great stuff. Bye. So I've given all of our guests the challenge of covering the ground in 3 to 4 minutes today. So if this works, we'll be done within 45 minutes or so. And my first guest, I don't know how to describe it, the architect of the festival, the project leader, the person who's behind the scenes pulling all the strings to make it happen. It's Susheel Rao, who is going to by way of an introduction to today, is going to talk about the 2-week festival. And I've got 3 or 4 questions I'd like to throw at you, Susheel, as we discussed the other day. And we'll be interested to hear what you have to say. So what is this festival? Tell us, give us some background and context as to what it is, Sustainability Festival.
So the festival, it's basically been running since 2015, with a break last year, of course, run by 2 local charities, Sustainable St Albans and St Albans Friends of the Earth. And it's mainly organised by volunteers, with 2 people who are paid a little bit to make it happen. We have a small comms team, and I'm the project coordinator for it. And it's what it is. It's about getting local groups, local organisations, local businesses thinking about what they can do, running events, showing people, talking to people about different things that can happen and what they can do and where they can find out more about things.
And how have you gone about getting people involved? You've just hinted at it.
Well, it's all sorts of different ways. So we always ask the people who've been involved before to run events, and then we do things on social media. We do radio interviews. We have a monthly newsletter. Sustainable St Albans has their monthly newsletter, which always says about it. So we use all the normal sorts of channels, and then we go and talk to people, which
Lovely.
always helps.
Yeah, well, and just how many events are there? Is it over 100 or something?
There's well over 100 events. I think the last count was just over 150. And there's all sorts of different types of events. That's the beauty of it, because you get sort of things like this, things on Zoom, talks and discussions. You get bike rides and walks, things for children, things for families. Schools are really getting involved as well, which is brilliant. So they're not counted in the 150 events. They're private events usually. So a lot of people find their children are getting involved through their schools.
I guess that when you add up, maybe nobody will ever do the full count, but there must be thousands and thousands of people that one way or the other are involved over the next 2 weeks.
We do try and actually work it out and count.
You do?
We do. So at all the events, we try and get a number of how many people have participated, but it's a bit difficult. So something like this, we'll have no idea, because we've got the people on the Zoom call, but we don't know how many people are watching live and watch it further on. I
wish we knew the answer to that as well.
It'd be great, wouldn't it? And then we're also asking people who participate to go to an event to actually do our feedback form, which you can find on the SustFest.org website as well.
Let me be parochial in asking you the next question. If you think about Redbourn, the village of whatever we are, 5,500 people, what are your thoughts on what people can do here in Redbourn? What comes to mind when I ask you that question?
So there's 2 things that come to mind. One is I'm a cyclist, and one of the reasons I go to Redbourn a lot is because I cycle there. And it's thinking about how you think about transport and how you get places. So you may not be able to walk to all the places that you might in a larger town or in St Albans City, but it is thinking about, well, do I need to make this trip, or can I make this trip and combine it with other things so you drive less? Or when we're allowed, going with someone else, which is both more sociable and uses less fuel per trip. So there's things like that. There's things in terms of gardening, food growing, and those sorts of things. I know you've got some really nice allotments there. Growing your own food, sourcing local food wherever possible, thinking about what you're eating, reducing food waste, which is something anyone can think about and do something on. So there's things that everyone can do. There's things that are local, that are more specific for villages. So other things everyone can do is looking at your energy use, whether that's turning off lights or improving your insulation, or getting solar panels installed. And there's a talk about solar panels, I think it's on Sunday, with an organisation which do discounted solar panels for the district.
Oh, good. So there's lots of things that we can all do. We can all make our little bit of a difference.
There's loads we can all do, and whether that's reducing what you're using in all sorts of ways. If you are using something, then reuse it and then recycle it, and just thinking about what you need to do, what you want to do, and how to do it in a lower environmental impact manner.
Why does all of this matter, do you think? It's the big picture question, I guess I'm asking.
So it matters in a number of ways. It matters because we are causing climate change. The input of CO2 or carbon dioxide equivalent into the atmosphere is increasing the rate of temperature rise more than has ever been seen in the history of the planet, at the rate it's happening at. And that has a knock-on effect on what our climate is like and what our weather is like. And because the rate is so fast, it means we can't adapt very quickly. So that impacts all the biodiversity and things like that. It matters on a local level in terms of things like air pollution, which affects our health, congestion, which affects our health in a different way, and things like that. And then also just the amount we're consuming, which both reflects on carbon emissions, but also just on having to deal with that waste and what we're doing with it, and what we need, the resources we're using that we don't need to use, which could be better used elsewhere. Right.
Thank you. It's a great answer. So I think we're in the first couple of days of the festival. Just a quick plug for where do people go if they want to find out what's going on over the next 2 weeks?
So the best place to go is to go onto our website at sustfest.org, and there's a link on the homepage for the digital program, which the best one is a flip book sort of thing where you can flip through and have a look. If you really prefer a printed version of the program, we do now have some. There will be copies at various places from today and tomorrow. Anyone popping into St Albans Market today can pick one up at pop-out plastic, face-out plastic stall. There'll be some behind the counter in Harpenden Library and some on the High Street in Harpenden, which you can go and pick up.
Right.
And there will be other places. I'm just working it out.
Great stuff. Thank you, Susheel, for that wonderful overview of what the festival is and why we're doing it and how people can contribute. I'm being told to my right we have a question from
Mavis would like to ask a question. Could you possibly put it in the chat box?
Yeah, could Mavis you put your question in the chat box, if that's possible? We'll pick that up in a moment, but let's carry on in the interest of time, and we'll capture the question. Our next guest is a regular contributor to our Community Newsbite calls, our very own Redbourn's Kate Bretherton. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Now, I happen to know you've got your own special feature as part of the festival, but I think today you're going to share with us some reflections upon our own village and the topic of trees. So, Kate, good morning and over to you.
Yes, I am giving a talk about the trees of St Albans on Thursday the 3rd of June, if you want to sign up for that. That's
Thursday the 3rd of June.
Hearts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust contribution is my talk. So what I want to do today is to make people in Redbourn just aware of the amazing job that our trees are doing for us, right from the very top of the canopy, where they are guzzling carbon out of the air and gushing oxygen into it. And then all through the canopy, if you think of all the different wildlife habitats that there are along the branches in the leaves, caterpillars eating the leaves that will feed the chicks. I mean, it's such a habitat, a canopy, and all the branches right down the trunk and around the roots, and then into the roots and into the soil. The tree roots have sugars that have carbon in them, so that that carbon goes into fungi right down into the soil, and all the other trillions of different kinds of creatures that there are in the soil. And also, most of them directly or indirectly get their energy from those sugars in the tree roots. And it's the tree roots that get those essential minerals that we all need out of the geology at the bottom, and then that goes right up into the tree roots, and it's browsing on tree leaves that gets us those extra essential elements. So right from the very crown of the tree down into the roots and beyond into the soil, the trees are doing an amazing job for us.
Wow. A one-woman show for the value of trees. I now know what tree hugging's all about.
Certainly, if you're hugging a tree and look up into it, you glimpse the sublime.
Yeah. And also cast your eyes downwards, because there's a lot going on beneath the ground as well, as you're saying.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many trees we've got in Redbourn, Kate.
What does it matter? Every tree's a goddess.
Yeah, you kick my question into touch quite properly. What does it matter? They're all wonderful trees. I'd never thought of it. Gushing and guzzling. Those are the two words I just made a note of from your description. Thank you so much, Kate. And can I encourage everybody, if that was a taster for what you're going to cover on the 3rd of June, then we need to be there. 3rd of June, you said, didn't you? Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for that contribution. Always much appreciated and welcomed. Let's move on to our one of our own gang, Rachel Mackey. Rachel, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Perfectly. So Rachel is going to share with us a recommendation from somebody some of us are familiar with. Rachel, over to you.
That's right. Even though he couldn't be here in person today, we couldn't let the call go by without Simon Vegro being involved. He watched something on Amazon Prime, which is where you can find this still. And he shared it with us, and I watched it as well. It's called The Moo Man, and it really is an absolutely beautifully made short film about local dairy farming. I won't say too much else about it. I'll let Simon do that for you, but really, really would recommend it. We thought it'd be worth listening to this recommendation today in particular.
Hello, my name is Simon and I live in Redbourn. My recommendation, serendipitously, coincides with the St Albans Sustainability Festival and the special newsbite that Active in Redbourn has scheduled for the 26th of May. It's a film with the somewhat unprepossessing title of The Moo Man. You could be forgiven for not being overly attracted to watch it from the title, but it is in fact a gentle and understated masterpiece. It tells a story of the struggles of a small independent dairy farm to stay afloat in the face of the commercial power of the supermarkets, who sell milk for less than it costs to produce. It's a sad fact that one family farm closes every single day in the UK. But the film is so much more than that. It captures the farmer's affection for and special relationship with his cattle, especially the star of the show, a 12-year-old Frisian called Ida. I'm reminded of Robert Frost's lines from his poem A Considerable Speck. I have none of the tenderer-than-thou collectivistic regimenting love with which the modern world is being swept. It's not a sentimental film, and it doesn't have the touch of Disney about it, and it's all the better for that. You're not going to weep buckets at the end, although like me you'll probably shed a tear or two. You will, however, be quietly moved and will perhaps question the rampant consumerism that is doing so much damage to our beautiful but fragile world. You may even go in search of raw, unpasteurised organic milk while it still exists. Everybody I know that has watched this film has been moved by it, and it was also recognised in the British Independent Film Awards and also the Sundance Film Festival. You can catch it on Amazon Prime, and I'm sure other places too. I hope you enjoy it and your milk. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Who could not want to watch it after that beautiful recommendation? So as we always say each week, if you do have any recommendations of your own and you'd like to send us a voice recording, just a minute or so, it can be a book, a TV show, a film, that would be absolutely fantastic. So send that to info@activeinredbourne.co.uk, or just let me know and I can help you with recording that. Okay, I think I'm doing what's new, Ivan.
Indeed you are, Rachel, so just keep going.
So what's new? So you've probably already received the new Redbourn news through your doors on the same subject as the call today, stepping up to tackle climate change. So have a look through there. It's absolutely fantastic with so much great information. I won't talk again about too much of it because I think we'll be covering some in the rest of the call, but really worth looking through that. Just to also say, in terms of what's new generally, citizens' advice is still available by the phone for anyone who needs that. 01727 811 118. And there's a call for volunteers from Redbourn in Bloom. They're doing the new planter on the Hemel Hempstead Road from the 29th to the 30th, and some summer plants on the 5th of June. So if you could contact Pat Schofield, if you could help out with Redbourn in Bloom. She's on hello@redbourninbloom.org.uk, or you can call her on 793096. And Pat would absolutely love to hear from you if you could help out with that. The Hart's Horse Show is on from the 29th to the 31st of May. On June the 1st, there's an RSPB group walk from the Redbourn Mill at 6 o'clock in the evening, and that's free to join. So that sounds fantastic. That would be really good. And then, of course, on the 3rd of July, we have our own Redbourn Fun Day, and we'll be saying a lot more about that in the coming weeks, but definitely want to put in your diary for now.
Thank you, Rachel. There's a lot going on, as they say. Thanks very much. Okay, let's just before we move on, I think one of our listeners, Mavis Ambrose, indicated she wanted to ask a question. It may have been answered in the sessions that we've had so far, but if you do want to ask the question, Mavis, maybe unmute and ask now if you're there, or put it into chat. Yeah, my wife's saying it'd be a lot easier for you to put the question into chat if you can do that, Mavis, and we'll make sure we get an answer either from me or more likely from one of our guests. Speaking of which, Kate Ford. Welcome, Kate. Good morning.
Hi, Ivan. Hi there.
Morning to you. Welcome, as I say. Kate's going to talk to us about the topic that engages all of us, and some of us more than others during the day, which is food and sustainability. So, Kate, I'm looking forward to hearing this. It's I eat far too much and enjoy it, and I'm a vegetarian, so I'm all ears. But
Great.
So I'm looking forward to your short talk. Over
Excellent.
to you.
Thanks. Eating and choosing what to eat is something most of us do 3 times a day or more if you're a regular snacker like me. Here in the wealthy West, we have so much choice of what to eat. And that moment when you choose what you're going to have for your next meal is the point in your average day when you have one of the biggest impacts on the planet, both in terms of your carbon footprint and also how much of the planet's resources you use. We're talking today about sustainability. Is it sustainable? Can we keep doing this forever? And the difficult and uncomfortable truth is that our Western diet, with its abundance of cheap and plentiful meat and cheese, fish, milk and eggs, is quite simply unsustainable because rearing animals for food hits the planet hard. It didn't seem like such a problem back in, say, the 1950s. There were only 2.5 billion of us on the planet, and we might have had a joint of meat on a Sunday, leftovers for a day or two after that, and fish on a Friday. But now there is 7.9 billion of us to feed, and that number's growing fast. And in the wealthiest parts of the world, we eat so much more meat cheese, fish and eggs than we used to. And as developing countries get richer, which is great, their diet moves closer towards ours. There are just so many of us, and the quantity in which we demand these animal products is unsustainable. So what exactly is the problem with farming so many animals? Well, one of the biggest problems is not so much the animals themselves, but the amount of food that they need to eat during their lifetime. To produce 1 cow's worth of beef, you need to grow a lifetime supply of food for that single animal. You need the farmland to grow that food, the water to irrigate it, the fertilizers and the pesticides that go into growing it. 70 billion farm animals are reared every year. And by demanding all these animal products at every meal on every day of the week, we're effectively giving the planet 70 billion more mouths to feed. Farming animals for food uses 82% of the world's farmland, but it only produces 18% of the world's calories. It's so very inefficient. And the solution is such a simple one. We need to eat more plants and fewer and better animal products. Every meal based on plants rather than animals uses 76% less agricultural land and emits half the greenhouse gases and the other pollution caused by rearing animals. And don't just take my word for it. In Sir David Attenborough's recent book, A Life on Our Planet, he says, if I can find it, a wealth of research has already been done to deduce what kind of diet would be fair, healthy and sustainable, both good for people and good for the planet. The universal opinion is that we will have to change to a diet that is largely plant-based. This will not only reduce the amount of space we need for farmland and produce fewer greenhouse gases, it will be much healthier for us too. Nobody said it was easy. Old habits die hard. But the planet doesn't need a handful of people doing veganism perfectly. The planet needs billions of people in the most affluent countries to start making changes to their food choices, quite simply to start shifting the balance towards eating more plants and fewer animal products. But what does eating plants actually look like? Is it all lettuce and lentils? Eating plants is choosing the vegan version of the salted caramel Magnum, ordering from the vegan menu at Pizza Express, or choosing the amazing vegan banana cake with chocolate chips at the Enchanted Tearies. It's never been so easy or so enjoyable. Until recently, that word vegan had pretty negative connotations. The vegan option was the bland and boring one, the bean and lentil option with windy side effects. Veganism was a bit hippie, a bit extreme. Well, times have changed. And people are realizing quite quickly that the vegan option is in fact tastier than ever before, but also the fair option, the compassionate option, the sustainable option. We have so much choice, and that choice that we make 3 times a day gives us the power to do a great deal of damage, but also to make a really significant difference. The most dangerous thing for our planet right now is the belief that it's someone else's responsibility to do something about it. It's too late to leave changing the way we eat to the next generation. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
Well, 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 very persuasive. And speaking of old dogs, namely me,
not at all.
Am I hearing you correctly that the mantra is consume less animals and consume more plants? You're not necessarily saying everybody needs to be vegan. Part of the journey says you can make a contribution.
Absolutely. I think if everyone shifts, I mean, the ideal would be that everybody would go vegan overnight, and that would make a massive difference to the amount of land use. We could restore rainforests and grasslands and all sorts that are being chopped down to grow food for animals. But no, that's not going to happen. And if people start shifting, if lots of people start making small changes, that has a huge amount more impact than a handful of people totally changing their diet. So yeah, everyone's got to start shifting.
And the same argument applies. So I'm a pescatarian, so I eat a little bit of fish and dairy. I should eat more plants, less fish, less dairy food.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have time to talk about fish, but it's a similar problem where we used to sort of fish small amounts off coastal waters, and now we demand so much fish that we have these massive sort of tankers going off into the middle of the oceans with huge nets and just plundering everything out the ocean, and there's just not going to be enough left. So yeah, we just need to kind of cut back on everything, eat more plants and less of everything else to be more sustainable.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. You're making me think, which is for me one of the whole purposes of this morning. Thank you again. I'd like to move over now to David Mitchell, who isn't just our district councillor, isn't just our chair of the parish council, but he also, I think, took up the cudgel and has been the inspiration and creator of the Climate Action group in Redbourn, for Redbourn. I think that's right, David. And
that's right.
And just, why don't you just tell us something about the Climate Action group? For those who knew nothing, what would you say it is, and so on and so forth?
Well, I formed it through Redbourn Parish Council about 2 years ago, because I was becoming more and more aware of the crisis really facing us. I mean, Susheel and Kate have touched on things, but I began to realise that you know, after a long period, 12,000 years or so of stability in terms of climate, when humans spread all over the world and in recent times obviously have multiplied considerably, we were heading for a disaster. But when you talk in terms of the human race being wiped out by the end of the century, it's not the sort of thing that people want to hear about, is it? Politicians don't like to say that. So I was thinking that, so what we really need to do is try and make it a bit more user friendly. So by starting a small action group in Redbourn, I wanted to sort of get residents involved and do what they can do in a small way. It would also be looking at what the parish council can do to be greener. And I think, I mean, it started off quite well. We had a couple of meetings and we had a lecture planned, and then suddenly coronavirus hit us. So it's only been really a Facebook page so far. But there is quite a lot you can do, and I can talk about that if you like.
Yeah, do keep going, keep going.
One of the things that you know, we were obviously looking at how we can, you know, deal with the common and things like that, but getting residents involved. There's a very good website called Count Us In, and Redbourn Climate Action has sort of joined in that, and it's looking at the little things that you can do to improve your life. So yes, cutting out dairy products and red meat and things like that, and our councillors and hopefully residents will sort of be taking part in it. You can find, if you Google or, you know, put in a search engine Redbourn Climate Action, you should find it. It should come up either as a Facebook page or you can go via our website, and you sign up to do small little things. So I mean, this is, I don't know if you can see that, that's the page, and you can, you know, you can walk or cycle more, repair and reuse more, cut food waste. And the idea is that you say, I'm going to do one of these things, and then you revisit it after a couple of months and it measures, you know, your progress. And I think it helps to sort of get people involved in the whole process of trying to improve the climate, because if we don't start reversing the global warming, then people being born today are not going to, you know, by the end of the century they'll see the end of the world as we know it. You know, nature will be disconnected and all the rest of it. So that's basically the idea. And just looking at this, I actually signed up, I don't know if you can see that, dial it down. So I'm cutting my heating down by a degree or two, and instead of going around in a t-shirt, I'm putting on a proper jumper and trying to sort of use less energy. And I've got Simon here, Simon Vegro, who's if you can see that, he's
what's he up to?
He's going to wear clothes to last. He says here, over the next 2 months, instead of buying clothes, I will buy no new clothes and continue to sometimes donate or recycle my old clothes. This will reduce my carbon pollution by 38 kilograms. I don't think you actually have to calculate the kilograms yourself. It does it for you. And Chris Kelly, our clerk's cutting food waste, and Becky Firth, who's one of our officers, is going to walk and cycle more. So I do encourage people to try and join in that. at a local level and take part, so that you know, if everybody in Redbourn started doing that, it would make a difference. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's obviously, you know, you can do it anywhere. St Albans has got a similar sort of thing, which was set up by the people behind SustFest, I think. Is that correct, Susheel? Yes. So yeah, that's what we're doing in you know, Redbourn, is Redbourn Climate Action.
So if I play back, David, every single one of us could, for sake of argument, pick 3 or 4 things, whether it's having 1 car rather than 2, walking and cycling, as Susheel was suggesting earlier, eating differently, you know, keeping warm by wearing more clothes. There's literally something we can all do to make a wee contribution to the big goal of saving the planet.
That's right. I mean, it's, you know, they're only asking you to do one thing, but you can obviously sign up for more. But it's really getting the message out, really, in a sort of more acceptable way, that, you know, we do have a problem and we can do something about it. If you get you know, the scientists saying we're all doomed and all the rest of it, people think, oh well, I'll take no notice of that, I'll carry on as I am. But you know, we've reached a stage now where you know, Kate was talking about our massive consumerism, really, and obviously the increase in the population, it's just totally unsustainable. So we've got to reverse that, and we can each individually do it. That's the point.
Absolutely. So just as we come to a close, remind us all again, it's Count Us In, is that right?
Yes.
Count Us In, and we can get to details either through the parish council website or presumably by just Googling.
Yeah, I mean,
the best way to get involved.
You can search it on Facebook or go to our website, or just put it into any search engine like Google and it should come up. You should be able to see it. I've tested it to make sure that does actually happen. So it will happen, yes. And of course, the you know, I mean, if you want to know what the district council is doing, it's all on their website. I'm part of the group that's actually been looking at you know, what the district council can do. They've produced a large document. At the moment, I'm just looking at their page at the moment. It says, what have we achieved so far? And it says, all electric vehicle car hub coming to St Albans spring 2021. Energy audits of our largest buildings and solar panel surveys now complete. PV surveys rather. Solar street schemes, rewilding schemes, electric vehicle charging points, and these are the things that are already being done. So they're working, the district council is working towards being carbon neutral by 2030, which is incredibly ambitious, but we have to be ambitious, otherwise we won't reverse global warming. And again, you know, as you go up the political structure, Herts County Council have made it one of their 4. The new incoming leader of Herts County Council, Richard Roberts, has made it one of his 4 priorities to you know, tackle climate change. So they've got big plans. They're spending millions of pounds dealing with it, and the beauty that's something that's got to happen.
The beauty of what you're describing, though, in terms of Count Us In, is that whilst of course it's right and proper that, you know, the council bodies are doing the right things, big picture, big projects type stuff, but just listening to you, David, there's things each and every one of us can do in our little way.
Yes.
To help.
And it's not a waste, you know. I mean, people think, well, what's the point? You know, if I mean, I've cut out milk practically from my diet because I'm aware that, you know, that milk is one, you know, our consumption of milk is one of the problems about global warming. You know, there are too many, apart from the Moo Man, I'm afraid there's just too many cows on the planet, and they're a major contributor to global warming. But that's our fault, of course, as human beings. And you know, but the fact that I know that I'm doing it, and I can see other people are doing it, it makes me feel good, I suppose, and I'm hoping it make other people feel good. And these little steps, if we can just sort of spread this out and it becomes universal, then we will succeed in saving the planet as we know it. But we've got to act now. Yeah.
And on that encouraging note, I'd like to say thank you, David. As always, you made a great contribution. Great stuff. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm struck by sometimes the little decisions we make may appear to be inconsistent with one another. So there are different approaches to sustainability that we quite rightly need to take. And I'm going to introduce our next two guests, because I suspect, and I'm not quite sure what they're going to both say, but I suspect both John Pritchard as chair of the Vere Valley Society and David Watts from Affinity Water will agree on a common goal, but probably have a different perspective on the route to get to the common goal. And that's right and proper that it should be that way. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome firstly John Pritchard from the Vere Valley Society. John, welcome and hello.
Hello, I'm glad to be with you this morning.
Pleasure. Good to have you here. Tell us a little bit, John, about the Vere Valley Society and how what you're doing relates to this big topic of sustainability.
Well, the Vere Valley Society was formed way back in 1976, and for those of an older disposition, they'll remember that was a long hot summer, and guess what? The River Vere dried up, probably for the first time, and the society was formed. One of its main aims was to ensure more water in the river more often, indeed a guaranteed flow under St Michael's Bridge in St Albans, and obviously that was a great benefit to the local residents, but also to all the wildlife that lived along the river that was being lost. And alongside that was an objective to promote the walks up and down the Vere Valley, Redbourn and Northwards included. So that's how the society started, and there was a recognition that we were losing this valuable chalk stream habitat and a globally rare habitat to boot.
Right. You've led me to a question I was going to ask you a little bit later. What's so special about these here chalk streams? I know that there are a couple of hundred of them on the planet, but why are they so special, I wonder? Well,
the water bubbles up out of the ground, so alkaline water at a regular temperature, and it supports a unique ecosystem. And that in itself, with only, as you say, just over 200 in the world, most of them in England, many of them in Hertfordshire, it's a unique habitat that we should be seeking to preserve. And we can hardly criticise the cutting down of the Amazon rainforest if we can't look after our own unique habitat that we've got here in the UK.
Quite right too. And what are the things that the society is up to at the minute that you think will be Redbourners ought to hear about?
Well, two things really. One's water quantity and one's water quality. They're the two things that make the River Vere work well. Presently, we've had a very wet winter, or two very wet winters, and the river's looking fantastic. But it doesn't look this good that often. We're still well above average in terms of its flow at the moment compared to a normal summer. But what we're doing is we're working to get more water in the river more often. So looking at abstraction reduction, talking to Affinity Water about what they can do in the upper reaches so that we might get more water around Redbourn on a more regular basis. Presently, a good portion of the river, the top third, probably only flows once every 10 years, whereas in times past, it used to only dry up once every 10 years. So if we can get water in the river more often, that'll increase the number of species, it's good for biodiversity and so on. High water has actually brought another issue, which is sewage spills. And we've discovered that not only is the Mark 8 sewage works putting out a fair amount of sewage, has been since February, but as most of your regular listeners will know, that the tops are blowing off the manholes and putting sewage into the meadows, if not into the river itself. There are a couple of places where the river's being affected. So we're talking with Thames Water about what they can do, and they are taking action. A lot of the groundwater is getting into the sewage system, and that's adding to the volume, and that's one of the big problems. And I know they talk a lot about the fatbergs in the system too, so we can probably all do our bit by not pouring the wrong thing down the drain. But better quality and quantity of water in the Vere is what we're striving for.
And just to endorse your perspective there, I can speak as a Crown Street resident that Thames Water have had a tanker on my street for 3 or 4 of the last days in the week, trying to reduce the flooding in the field at the bottom where the horses are.
Exactly, the same is true on the Hemel Hempstead Road as well at the other end of Redbourn. Tankers are there regularly to try and take away from the volume that's trying to get down the relatively small pipe to St Albans and the treatment works.
thinking of the River Ver, it's one of our precious assets, and I guess I'd include the Red in that regard, but are there a couple of things, a couple of examples of the River Ver at its best that you think our villagers should look out for and enjoy?
Absolutely. Well, they're probably very, very aware, but at the moment with high water flows, get out there and enjoy it, make the most of it, take photos, share them, enjoy it, and be happy about it. But the two good places, one is obviously north out of the village, up the river towards the Redbourn golf course. Go and have a look at Porridge Pot, or Flint Field as it's known to Rothamsted, where the water flows across that field probably once every 10 years. It's flowing quite well even now. And it's clear, it's sparkling, and it's a good example of what a chalk stream can look like in its upper reaches. And going south, if you're going towards Redbourn Mill to pick up your bread or whatever, go past the fishery. Just before you get to the fishery, there's a short stretch there of clean gravel, great flowing water. The water crowfoot is billowing, and that's a home to lots of the little invertebrates that live in the river, that are food for bats and birds and so on. I mean, that's a fantastic showcase. That's what a chalk stream should look like, and we want more of it to look like that.
You do a great job of selling the River Ver, John. Thank you so much. I guess you're open for business as the society. If people want to have interest and want to get involved, they can go to the website, can they?
Absolutely. Well, for SustFest, we're running 3 mayfly walks down at the bottom end of the river. And we've even laying on an extra one tomorrow evening. There's a few spots on that. So you can go to riverver.co.uk and send me an email, and we'll slip you on tomorrow evening down at Drop Lane, and I'll see if I can find you a mayfly to enjoy.
Oh, wow. Get out there and enjoy, everybody.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. So to just...
I've put a question in the chat line. David,
go on, David. Ask it.
Shall I ask it? Yes, I just wanted to know, John, what you think about the health of the River Red, which obviously flows into the River Ver over the Redbourn Common. And I've always been curious to exactly where the River Red, what the source of the River Red actually is, because it comes out of a pipe on the Hemel Hempstead Road, and I don't know where it goes, sort of how it comes about, you know, how much, how far back it flows is what I'm trying to say.
We're on the same case with the Environment Agency. It's absolutely terrible. It looks great most of the time, apart from when it ran yellow a few weeks ago. The source is manifold. The runoff from the M1, the Cherry Trees Lane. There's a big settlement pond that takes water from the what it would be the northwest of Hemel Hempstead, and a lot of water comes from that. A lot of it's polluted road runoff. I actually do the invertebrate monitoring on Redbourn Common. It's rare to get anything in it that indicates the chalk stream. The original source, I think, of the red were springs which were capped off underneath the M1 when it was built. So if we have a long dry period, it's beautiful chalk stream water, but most of the time when it rains, we get terrible runoff from all sorts of poisonous habitats. So we're looking to see if we can improve on that. There are grants available from Highways England for things that happen within a kilometre of a trunk road. So yeah, there is something there if we can get to prove where it's coming from.
Really interesting. I had no idea at all. Thanks, John, and thanks for the question, David. Let's same topic, but change horses and talk to David Watts from Affinity Water. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Ivan. I'm just going to try and share my screen because I've put some slides together.
Okay. Well, keep to the 3 to 4 minutes. He says quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, I'm sure we're going to get a really interesting and different perspective, but on you go, David.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hopefully you can all see the slides come up now. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. So yeah, I share a lot of the common goals as John to try and improve chalk streams across our supply area. So I'm just going to touch on that and sort of the wider water supply issue that we see in the southeast and in the context of sustainability. So Affinity Water is a water supply only company, and on average we supply around 900 million litres of clean drinking water to about 3.6 million customers across the southeast, including the Redbourn area. So we've got a statutory duty to supply clean, wholesome drinking water and face a number of challenges in doing that, while sustaining water sources and the environment for future generations. including internationally important and rare chalk streams, including the River Ver. Across the southeast, population growth is increasing, and this is a water-stressed area, as we know. So I'm just going to touch on a few things, some of the things we're currently doing to help we can ensure water supply into the future and protect that supply. So the map on this slide shows our three main supply areas. And I've marked Redbourn there with the red dot. You can see just above St Albans. So Redbourn itself sits within the coal water resources zone within our central area. So in terms of reliable supplies of fresh, clean drinking water, I mean, it's fair to say across the globe they're becoming increasingly scarce due to the pressures such as population growth and climate change. So the southeast of England is designated as being water stressed, and the image on this slide shows the direction that we're going. So basically demand for water is increasing and the supply of available water is decreasing. So it's not a good picture when you look at it like that. So we have a water resources management plan which basically focuses from now until 2080, and that calculates how much water shortfall we're going to see during that time, and also how many more people we'll see in the southeast of England within our central region, which Redbourn sits. So if we did nothing, this would be the shortfall that we'd see. So pretty alarming. So fortunately we are planning and we're putting stuff in place to make sure that we don't have issues through this time period. So to give that some context really, a town the size of Stevenage uses around 20 million litres of water a day. So you can see that's basically over 10 towns the size of Stevenage would be short unless we took action now. So we're blessed in the southeast to have access to clean, safe drinking water at the moment. And this is something that we need to cherish and protect for ourselves and for the environment's benefit as well. So as a company, and indeed the water industry as a whole, need to look towards more extreme options to finding fresh water, be that removing the salt from seawater through desalination, or building new reservoirs, or transferring it from areas where we've got a surplus to areas where we have a deficit. So we all need to come together to meet this challenge, and by we, it means all of us. So to enable the future challenges to water supply to be met and to protect the environment, we're implementing a series of plans through our business plan and also our water resources management plan, and working on a host of large-scale capital investment programs to continue to ensure there's enough water, and we can reduce the amount of water we extract from groundwater sources where it's seen to have an impact on the environment, and linked to chalk stream impact. So to do this between now and 2025, we're looking to reduce our groundwater abstraction by 36 million litres a day, and we're also exploring regional options as shown on the slide to move water in from new areas and also move waters around our central supply area. We're currently working on a campaign to help customers reduce their water consumption. So we need to get demand down in our supply area from 152 litres per person per day to 129 litres per person per day by 2025. And we've just kicked off a new campaign which is called Save Our Streams, and it's really important about getting the messages out there to people that, you know, we can't continue to waste water, and it's not good for us and has serious impacts upon the environment. We also recognise that we need to improve, so we've committed to improve our operational efficiency and reduce our leakage by 20% by 2025. We're actively delivering biodiversity projects, reducing unsustainable groundwater abstraction, working with farmers to implement catchment management measures to improve water quality, and delivering river restoration projects across our supply area, including River Ver, to improve the river's ecological health. And we also have a couple of innovative plans, including seagrass sequestration to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. So we're looking to do that off the East Coast. And we've also got a project that's called Smarter Tanks Rainwater Harvesting, which is looking at further reducing water demand, particularly during periods of drought.
David, can I ask you a quick question? I was just thinking about the typical Redbourner, and I think you said a target of getting from 150 to 125. So what would your advice be to a resident and their families? To what might they do? Just a couple of things, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'd like to close really quickly. Yeah, so that's a great question, and this last slide kind of demonstrates where we're at in terms of per capita, so consumption. So people are using sort of 40% of their water at the moment for showering and sort of bathing, 22% for sort of flushing the toilet, hygiene. So there's a breakdown, and there's more information on our Save Our Streams website, which if you type that into Google, it gives you loads of hints and tips around what you can do to play your part, so we can all do more in the future to reduce the amount of time we spend in the shower, or just to turn that running tap off. Perfect. Thank you for listening. No, not at all. Thanks, David. I'm looking at the depiction of a toilet and a shower head. There's things we can do ourselves, isn't there? Very much so. Absolutely, yeah. Great stuff. So what we have here is a picture of of how Affinity Water is dealing with the fundamental issue of we're facing a water crisis, and water is a precious resource. So thanks for sharing that, David. That's really helpful. Our closing piece for today's call is a little bit different. One of our more notable residents in the village of St Mary's is a guy by the name of Tim Snatchup. And Tim sets himself up as something of an eco-warrior, and I suspect he has some perspectives that he'd like to share with us by way of bringing our whole review of sustainability to a close. Are you there, Tim?
I am indeed, Ivan, yes.
Good morning to you. I think I'm going to leave the floor for you, Tim.
Okay, right. Well, hi, Tim Snatchup here, eco-warrior, sustainability activist and climate change campaigner, giving you this special report for the Newsbite Sustainability Programme live from the picturesque Hertfordshire village of St Mary's. Now, sustainability is a hot topic right now, and I wanted to share with you an experience I had a couple of nights ago. Well, I say a dream. It was more of a nightmare. I was sitting at home in my room, eating a vegan sausage and spinach pasta and drinking a coconut and pomegranate smoothie when it happened. I'd never experienced anything like it before. It seemed so real that it was like an actual out-of-body experience. I was watching a film, Planet of the Apes. Not the 2001 remake by Tim Burton, but the original 1968 classic starring Charlton Heston. It was right near the end, and I must have fallen asleep. Anyway, while I was asleep, I had a dream. I was transported to the ever-expanding hole in the ozone layer into outer space, and then landed on what appeared to be another planet. It was a dark, inhospitable, forbidding place, like nothing I had seen before. I was in a city. It seemed incredibly overcrowded. There were people everywhere. The air was thick with smog. Everyone was wearing air filtration masks. I asked a young woman why it was like that. She told me that 70% of the world's population now lived in cities, as heat waves, droughts and floods had ravaged the land, making farming less profitable, resulting in hundreds of thousands of people migrating from rural areas and also from coastal regions. The last great superstorm had flooded miles of coastal settlements, and the new sea walls built only the year before to stop the ever-increasing erosion when already proving inadequate. Since the ice caps had melted and the great mountain ranges had thawed several years before, sea levels had risen faster than experts had ever predicted. The acidity of the ocean had also increased 100-fold, leading to the loss of all the barrier reefs, a total collapse of the ocean food chain, and the total devastation of fish stocks. Many major cities around this strange world were already uninhabitable, and the flooding threatened global supplies of safe drinking water. Looking around, I could see no trees, nothing green, just endless grey tower blocks. It was also incredibly hot, nearly 50 degrees centigrade. I could barely bear to be outside, but the woman said that was normal, the result of global warming caused by burning too much fossil fuels, uncontrolled deforestation, and the over-farming of animals for food. How do people survive here? I wanted to be back home, back in my room. But then I was passing a hospital, which was completely overrun with patients in the corridors, stairwells, everywhere. Despite all the advances in medical science, deaths from diseases like tuberculosis, malaria, cholera, respiratory illnesses were all at their highest levels in history, with the poor and the elderly the most vulnerable. By this point, I'd had enough. I wanted to leave this place. I wanted to be anywhere but in this dark, apocalyptic, dystopian city. And then I looked up, and as the smoke cleared for just an instant, I could make out the unmistakable white dome of St. Paul's Cathedral in the distance. I was in shock. This was London, and the year was 2075. I woke up in a cold sweat, barely able to comprehend what I'd witnessed. Was this a glimpse of the future? But it couldn't be true. I mean, surely it was just a dream. We would never be that stupid. Climate change is real. We need to make changes now. Reduce carbon emissions, cut back on fossil fuels, recycle more, make everything more energy efficient, cut back on plastic. We can all do our bit to make our planet more sustainable. Every day we make choices in our lives that affect the environment, the climate, and all other species. Planet of the Apes might just have been a film, but the underlying idea that humanity might one day destroy itself is still a very real one. Don't let it happen. This has been Tim Snatchup, campaigner for a greener, safer and better world. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for making me think. And I'm sure that's true for everybody who's listening in to our call this morning and over the next few days. So a heartfelt thanks from me. I'll reflect on your perspective of what our future might look like. But if we do something by way of count us in, we can all make a contribution to our futures in a positive way. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for being here. Have a great week and we'll see you next Wednesday. Goodbye.